All right, welcome back to Disrupt Education. I'm Peter Hostrawser. I got Alli here. Alli, it's early morning in Italy. We've got a great guest today. How are you doing?
Well,
I'm good.
buongiorno from Italy. Yes, we do have a great guest. Ruben, you scheduled this meeting for 1:30 a.m. Italian time. But I'll let our guest introduce himself here in a second. We've got a couple more episodes here with me in Italy. So if you're tagging along on this whole Disrupt Education series podcast, you are not being led out of the Italian experience here.
There'll be pictures. But yeah, we do have Ruben Harris here, the CEO of Career Karma. Wow, Ruben, it's great to have you here. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Can you give us a little bit more of an intro about who you are and what you're doing with Career Karma, and maybe a little bit of educational past?
Yeah, I mean, just commenting on Ali being in Italy, I think that's special because it just talks about this shared experience that we've all had going through COVID, going into a recession where education has been forced to go online. Remote work has accelerated, and a lot has changed since you and I first met, Peter. I know you're in Chicago right now, but you and I met in Oakland in the Bay during the Tech 2020 initiative, which I thought was special because that was before Career Karma existed. So for people that don't know what Career Karma is when I met Peter, we were running a podcast called Breaking Into Startups, where we shared stories of everyday people that figured out how to break into tech. It didn't matter whether they went to college or whether they were high school dropouts, or if they were college dropouts, we made sure that we shared stories about how they broke into tech. And that led to us creating a company called Career Karma, where we help job training programs find qualified applicants, and a job training program online for people that want to break into tech. We have about 2.5 million people a month that come to us, mostly women and people of color. And when I say technology, they don't want to just do software engineering. They want to do things like sales and customer success. And so we've created a platform that is free for them, creates live audio room experiences to make sure that they're not just enrolling in programs, but have the peers, the coaches, and the mentors that are going to help them complete the programs and find the job. And through that process, we've raised about $52 million in venture capital after doing Y Combinator in winter 2019.
This is wonderful. I love to see the evolution because I think you were actually hosting. You were the person asking the questions and leading the conversation with the Congressional Black Caucus. I can't remember what community college we were at, but it was amazing. And I was lucky enough to be there and meet you.
You're
Alli,
talking about so
yeah.
you were at the round table one.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there
I
was
mean,
there was amazing people at that table, and just wow, just future. The future was in that room, and it's really fun to see it evolve. So it's amazing.
yeah, yeah.
So
I mean, for the people that don't know, just so that they understand who was in that room. First of all, I like that you called out that I was the one asking the questions, because something that we talked about on the podcast is like either you're at the table or on the table getting eaten. And it's like very important for us to make sure that the right people are at the table, the right voices are at the table. So we had the worker voice represented at the table, which is very important. We had the government voice represented at the table. We had the community college voice, like Eloy Oakley.
mhm.
Community colleges, he was there. The community college system has put more people into middle class than any other institution. I think that's important to call out. Even though a lot of people think Career Karma is anti-college because we focus on skills first initiatives, but that was at the table. Co-Path was at the table, which is working with colleges. And then boot camps were at the table, and a lot of skills first people were at the table, in addition to myself, which was the pre-career Karma at the table. So it's important for us to all be working together on solutions, and I just want to call out that importance on collaboration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I felt like I won the lottery when I walked in and was able to just listen to that live, and I know you were broadcasting out. Um, Alli, you get the first question. What do you want to ask?
It seems like, you have this beautiful, framework to help people. You have Career Karma. You have this platform. Like, where did this passion for this lane stem from? Like, can you give us a little background on, like, why even do this work? We're here on Disrupt Education, like, that what you are doing is that work. So what's kind of like a why for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think the best ideas come from your lived experience, and my lived experience, whether we're talking about tech or finance or anything, since I started educating myself, came through connecting with people that opened doors for me and shared educational programs that helped me get the skills that I need in order to not just do well at that job, but also communicate who I am and what I'm able to do. So it's the shorter answer is it's the product that I wish that I had when I was breaking into tech. My co-founders did boot camps. My brother did boot camps. Y Combinator is technically a boot camp for entrepreneurs. And as we started to see the world change, like we talked about earlier with COVID and the recession, it's clear when you look at reports like McKinsey's talking about 375 million workers needing to switch careers between now and 2030, that they're not going to go back to college. They're going to rely on job training programs to find their next jobs. And what that means is not that college is going to go away, but college itself is going to launch its own version of job training programs that are shorter, faster, and cheaper. So it's a product of what I wish that I had when I was breaking into tech. And the challenge that a lot of people face is as more and more courses are introduced, that landscape is confusing, and the wrong decision has a high cost of failure, not just from a money perspective, but from a time perspective. And we're in a time where we don't have that type of time. We don't like this need is urgent. And so I'm on fire to make sure that people are making the right decisions for their careers.
4 years in on Career Karma, if I'm not mistaken, and you're doing what a lot of people are looking at, or there was a lot of ideas at the table. There's a lot of people talking about some different things. I want to start with in that beginning. There's a lot of educators out there that are in a position of, I know everybody overuses this term, but pivoting and trying to change different ways. They feel stuck. They know, like the way Alli and I met was through kind of, connecting and trying to change the way that we do, I would say, a static system that hasn't moved around that much until COVID came along, and now we're all trying to figure things out. Can you talk us through some of the early challenges that you had? Because there weren't that many boot camps, or maybe there were. I'm very familiar with Lambda, now Bloom Tech, and a couple other ones. But how did you start this whole journey?
I like that you said 4 years in, because it's the longest job that I've ever had in my life. I think that it's interesting because the average tenure in tech is actually 1 to 2 years. And when you think about how the world has changed outside of like online education and remote work, we're entering into like the end of occupational identity, right? And what I mean by that is, you can be multiple things in your lifetime, right? So, usually when you introduce yourself to someone, they might ask you, who you are, where you went to school, where you grew up. But like, what do you do, right? So what do you do? Well, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm an educator. But like, what if you are a teacher and now you're a software engineer? What are you now? Right. Or then you did something else, right? So you're just who you are. You're Peter, you're Alli, right? That can do whatever they want to do in their life. And so that in and of itself is like a challenge to communicate this mindset shift. Like one of our guiding principles is always be learning. And when you think about our mission, which is to connect the world's talent to its next opportunity, you have to help people understand that there is always a new opportunity. And something else that's probably going to change is like of retirement. I know that that's like fighting words to some people, but like just look at 401ks right now. They're really more like 40Ks, right? It's like not doing so well, right? So like when you think about that, I think it's important to study areas like Japan and Okinawa. Like they have this word called ikigai. Like in Japan, there's actually not even a word for retirement, right? And ikigai is translated as the reason for living. And most people, I would argue, aren't doing what they love, right? And how do you help people figure out what they want to do in life so that it's their reason for living, or that gets them closer to their reason for living? And the first challenge that we had to face was attracting people so we could educate them through demand, like so through SEO and SEM, segmenting them based off of what they want to do, if they know what they want to do, and then matching them to the right training programs. And that started off just by inviting people into our home, organizing events, doing a podcast, doing media, doing other podcasts like this, and then eventually investing heavily into content and then creating a whole platform that got us to where we are. I would say the typical things that you hear about from a challenges perspective, like with fundraising, fundraising is challenging just like everybody. But we've been blessed in that department. I wouldn't say that's our biggest challenge. I would say now that we are a larger organization that has a mission of helping 1 billion people, when you're trying to serve, you have to get really good at communication. You get really good at speaking to people across time zones. Like we actually have people that work for Career Karma in 23 countries, United States, at LESSC, one that would work at 1 a.m. or if it's Friday in the US, the Philippines is working on the day ahead, right? So there's like a bunch of things that you have to deal with. And now that we're starting to work with employers, how do you keep this really powerful consumer base that has gotten to a point where if you Google how to get a job at Goldman Sachs, we pop up as number one, and leverage it to start working with an employer that's a bank that's investing in technology and then using education benefits for their people to really create a platform so that after they get that first job, they continue to get that education benefit invested into them, similar to like healthcare benefits for them.
There's so many nuggets in there. People are listening closely for the startup here. Okay, so I have to ask this question because it's really like what even sparked us trying to get you, to have us be in all these different time zones and connect. Was an article that you reshared about business schools seeing a decline in their enrollment. Okay, so what we're talking about here often on the podcast is, like what are different options for students and like why is education moving at a begrudgingly slow pace? Like why can't we adopt new models, and just put it out there? I really like the picture that you painted with, this conference that you and Peter met at, there was the right people in the room. But, what do you see as some of the challenges that a traditional university, college, or even going below that public school face as their own challenges to retain students in their educational sphere, and why are we seeing this decline? What that from your perspective? Very curious.
I mean, your question made me realize that I didn't fully answer Peter's question, so I'm going to answer both of them. Where, in the early days, there was only a few boot camps. But the things that they did really well is they focused on a specific skill set, and the way that they evaluated their quality wasn't a certificate or a graduation. It was outcomes driven. It was like, did they get you a job? So like that was like the early days. So when we're thinking about the types of schools that we work with, they had to have a history of outcomes. So they had to have jobs, right? But they also had to have online options. So like we're talking about this even pre-COVID, like we're like, they have to have an online option. Why was that important? Because accessibility matters, right? And if you look at the average age of a student, it's not just a 18, 17-year-old anymore. It's like 25, 35 plus year olds that are going to college or looking for post-secondary education. What does that mean? That means that they probably got other obligations, they got family, they got life needs, right? So they need to have a part-time option or a self-paced option. So outside of part-time self-paced, you also have a number that a lot of people are familiar with, which is $1.8 trillion in student loans, right? So a lot of people don't have the money to go to college, first of all, or a boot camp. And they already have, and they don't want to take on more. So, the other thing that we look for, and I'm getting to your question, Alli. The other thing that
you're fine.
the other thing that people are looking for is, does this have we wanted to have either deferred tuition model where you don't have to pay anything unless you get a job, or an ISA model where it's similar. You don't pay anything unless you get a job and the tuition comes out of your new salary. Except deferred tuition is more of a fixed monthly payment when you're done and you get a job. And the income share agreement option is a percentage of your salary. Okay. I say all of this because when you think about the purpose of college and an MBA, a lot of people will give you different answers historically before the pandemic. But after the pandemic, people will tell you, why do people go back to college during recession? Is to make more money. Is this going to get me a job? And the fact of the matter is, pre-pandemic, college already had a 61% completion rate or 60% completion rate, and a 41% of recent grads were underemployed, right? And also there was this huge resistance from higher education about whether they could go online, very similar to remote work. But when the pandemic hit, everybody's magically figured out that they could go online and then they go online, but then they don't really know how to facilitate online education very well. And the students that historically were interested in those schools are like, do I pay $50,000 or a lot of money to go to a school with no guarantee of an education that's only going to give me a degree, but I'm not sure if it's going to give me a job? So it was called into question. So that's on the college side, but on the MBA side, even more so. If you're getting your MBA, leadership or trying to find your life partner or a break in life. Sometimes you're looking for a break in life or looking for some soul searching, but you're really going to your MBA or graduate school because you want more money, period. Like you want a higher title, you want to get promoted, you want more money. So the answer to your question is that was affected during the pandemic, but now you're starting to see colleges also think about how boot camps, the boot camp model, which is more project-oriented, outcomes-oriented, jobs-oriented. See a lot of partnerships with employers so that career services side is figured out.
So we're in the secondary area. And so I'm going to reel it back into the secondary, and we'll just call it the public school system as it looks now. Because we're hoping for change. We're hoping for, a lot of things that you're mentioning in post-secondary opportunities to come to a place across the board that's equitable in the secondary systems that we have. Mm-hmm. What do you see there? In what ways do you think that secondary ed must change, and would also, if you could rank like your top 3 things now and then maybe some wish list things after that?
It's a good question because secondary is not my lane, which I think is good because I'm going to give you my naive answers. Sometimes superpower you can be more creative. Before we started Career Karma, we did an interview with a guy named Rodney Urquhart, who's a high school dropout, right? And from what I understand, there's 7 out of high school every year, right? So I think there's a big opportunity to reach them, like if you can, like to have an option for them. And very similar to like the people that have some college and no degree. There's like 30 million plus people like that. And I would assume there's millions of people in secondary that are in a similar place, and show them a list of employers that will pay for education. Straight up, like, because, what we're going through right now is history repeating itself. If you look at the days before the GI Bill and the 1920s, the Roaring '20s plague, and the creation of like apprenticeships and helping people get back to work, people would go straight from high school straight into employment. Like college is an early it's a newly created thing. So the short answer is I would create pathways that go direct to employment versus going direct to college. Number one. Number two, I would encourage employers to actively foster, actively embrace that model as well. So you have a lot of employers that are dropping the requirement to have a college degree in a job. But even at boot camps, a lot of them, the minimum age is 21 and up. But I think that making 18 and up education and employment normal is probably a good idea these days. And how can we get the governments and nonprofits involved to encourage apprenticeships and internships from people early on? Because even if you do plan on going to college, if you can create a similar model that you do in college, where in your junior year you get this internship and then by your senior year you get a job offer. How do we give practical job experience to juniors and then give them job offers by their senior year of high school so that they have practical work experience that'll get them the way they want to go? Last thing, I know you said only 3, I would say is stop talking about resumes so much and start focusing on portfolios, because just because you got a diploma or a degree does not mean that you actually have the skill, and you need to teach people to prove that they have skills. And the last thing that I'll say is focus on teaching people how to communicate and interpersonal dynamics. The reason why that's important is not just for job interviews, but in a remote-driven world, writing is a superpower. Being able to use emoji and video and audio and GIFs are all superpowers. Learning how to communicate, like how to use social media not as a waste of time, but to curate, create personal brands, I think is really powerful. So that's what I would say.
So when are you starting this school, man? Because you're right on, man. Alli, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it really leans into what you said earlier as occupational hazards, or no, the lack of occupational identities. And I think the reason my brain just said hazards, besides it being 2 a.m., okay, isn't it an occupational hazard and crisis for these kids not to get that experience if that's the route that they want? I think that the traditional model, it's the college model, I'll call it, even though it's new, it seems to be, I'll speak from when I was in the classroom, and Peter, when you're in the classroom, there's so many kids and their parents, and like the culture is like, well, of course you have to go to college. It's like stripping this crazy it's like a hazard to do anything other than like go to college, right? So I guess my thoughts are around, how do you help, besides, obviously started Career Karma, help people see that there are other lanes, than this traditional model and this more fluid model, that like work is designed to help you live and learn, and it's like an ongoing thing, and you don't have to be one identity.
Mm-hmm.
So we need you in
In secondary.
in secondary.
Well, related to what you're saying, I think storytelling matters. When you said hazards, I started thinking about things that people are exposed to when they're in secondary school, that could lead them in different directions that are fast money, I'll say. And how can you show that same individual that might be looking for fast money, that you can get fast money in other ways, right? In legal ways, right? And the only way to do that really is by showing that to them, because part of the reason why they might go for the fast money is because that's the only route that they know, right? And it may not be illegal. It may be music, it may be sports, it may be, acting, but that's because they see it. They see that's what's visible. Like, oh wow, this TikTok star is making all this money. This YouTube, like, they're making all this money. So I actually don't need to go to school, so I'm going to do this, right? Nothing wrong with this. Like being an entrepreneur, great, but like it's similar like to trying to get into the NBA. You can go for it. There's millions of people that try every year, but the slots are like maybe 25 slots, and you're putting a lot of effort into that. So how do you take calculated risk? Still go for the NBA, but also like learn this too, right? And I think the only way you're going to teach people that there's these other routes, like, is by storytelling. Most people don't know like what a Y Combinator is, or what a Teal Fellowship is, or where they'll actually pay you to drop out of school. I'm not saying drop out of school. I'm just saying just like know that there's other paths that also don't require you to code, right? So you don't have to just be a software. Like sales is the highest paid job in the world. And a lot of that fast money means that you have really good sales skills and really good distribution skills.
So the format of high school, I'm not sure if you went to a high school that was public, private, I had 8 periods a day or something like that. It is we still have a lot of traces of the past, the industrial model. In that kind of model, I think what had happened in high schools across the nation is they saw what colleges were doing and they just tried to drive everybody into it. There's monetary values. There's a lot of different politics involved in that. I don't want to go down that route, but do you see the way that a high school day looks differently in the future?
It's a good question. So to answer your question about my background, my mother went to public school, but I went to a very small high school. It had 100 students, but it didn't have the traditional, structure of a high school from like periods and subjects matter. In addition to a few other things like, faith and stuff like that, ethics, things like that. But I also am a Montessori kid. So I went to Montessori. And the reason why I bring up Montessori is because like, if I was going to like change high school, I would probably take a lot of the elements in Montessori and move it to secondary education, because like a lot of the elements in Montessori are also very similar to the bootcamp model too, or like, which also higher ed is adopted, where you're in mixed age classrooms, first of all, right? Which is not the case currently with high school, right? You have like different ages for 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. you have small classroom environments. Like I just told you, I was in small classroom. So you have like really good student teacher ratios. So people can give you the guidance, right? Which is very similar to how we think about it in career karma. Even though we want to help 1 billion people, we want to have these like small groups. So in secondary, like how do we create really optimal student teacher ratios? And in Montessori, you're taught to be an independent person that is mindful of your community, and your relationship with education or like what you're learning is less about getting a job and getting money, and like how you can serve the community and make it better. Right. So outside of like being defined by a role, outside of getting money, outside of getting a skill, like who are you and why are you here on earth and how are you contributing to society? Montessori is all about learning through play as well. Like how can you learn and make it fun? Like do what you love, same type of thing. So in high school, how can we figure out what the kids of Chicago love or what they want? Right. Well, the example in Chicago is music, right? Where there's a great music artist scene. You have Lil Durk, you got G Herbo, you have Chief Keef, you got Kanye, you have all these people, Lupe Fiasco, Chance the Rapper. You have all these artists that you're familiar with. And because you're familiar with them, you might want to become a sound engineer. So you're actually going to teach yourself how to use a MacBook. You're going to teach yourself how to use Pro Tools. You're going to teach yourself how to do all these things that are computer driven, and you are a for real engineer learning how to use software and hardware to create high quality music that reaches millions and billions of people. So the reason why you're driven to do that is because you're passionate about it, right? So in high school, how can we, first of all, understand what the kids care about and like, and then teach subject matter around that, right? So with music, you have music theory. You could teach a lot of math related to music theory. There's history. You could talk about the history of music in Chicago, right? There's, I don't know, we could pick anything you want to pick related to a subject matter for people, and teach them in that regard so that they're interested in it. And I think that's why the bootcamp model works so well, is because you're like very focused on what you want to learn. And I actually think all of our education systems are going to move towards this a la carte thing where you had a certain phase in life, and it's like a video game. I got to like get this tool to like open up this door, right? So
I know when you're describing it, I was actually picturing like, if you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I was thinking it's like really the purpose of school is the way you were just kind of describing it. And then beyond school, in like your job and your career, is to figure out like who you are and, you know, what you value and how you serve people. And it's much more community, maybe local driven. I like how you know, what you're trying to do with your companies, right? It's like, yes, we want to serve 1 billion people, but we still want to stay small within that. And that just really paints a beautiful model that anybody listening to this podcast could really try and take a piece of and think, well, how could I self-actualize more? How could I, you know, beyond like, right, like what you're saying, like with fast money and all these things that we could chase, and how could we still work on self-actualizing and just growing through play and through exploration and through all the things you listed. So those are some of my reflexive thoughts.
One more thing related to what you said just now is like, when you're learning through play, you know, typically the way schools are structured, you have not just large classroom sizes or a teacher lecturing to a classroom, but like you have a lack of understanding of the way people learn. So everybody doesn't learn the same way, but if you do align things on like what people are passionate about and this kind of like learning through play model, people will learn how they learn, which I think is like one of the most important skills that you can learn in life, because then you know how to learn anything and create good habits around anything. And I think the other thing that's cool about like a Montessori type format for secondary education is like, if you can break things from a structured classroom format where this is what you have to get done in the day, and do it however you want, that's actually going to, I'm not saying that that's how Montessori is structured, by the way, but it's how a lot of companies are structured now. It's like, it's not 9 to 5. It's like, here's your work, do it. And then, you know, you have like some meetings that happen where you're checking in to talk about what you did, but it's not always done in real time, you know?
You know, as you were speaking about, you know, the music industry, I actually just got, not personally, but the students, we were playing some music, and I'm older, so you know, I'm more the you know, Chance and those guys. So he is like Little Dirk just came to mind. So now I get to tell my kids, yeah, I was on a podcast yesterday with they mentioned Little Dirk. So old man Pete here gets it. So but you know, to your point there, even with the students that I have who you know, have those big aspirations for those one of 25 spots in the NBA or wherever, you know, helping them understand, hey, look, if you don't make the league, guess what? There's a lot of jobs around the league, right? Like there's a lot of different things there, and that really does open up capacities. But I want to round out by, number one, thanking you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. People can connect with you at careerkarma.com. Is there another place as well where you post some amazing stuff? I'm just going to throw that out there. I use a lot of it, teaching myself and the learners around me. Where else can people connect with you, Ruben?
Thank you. Yeah. So it's my name, RUBEN, at careerkarma.com. Sorry, that means that the time is about to be done. Sorry. So it's Ruben at careerkarma.com. Twitter.com/Ruben Harris. Same thing for Instagram. It's just my name everywhere. Same thing for LinkedIn, especially. So just tap in, send me a message. I'm probably the most accessible person, and because I like to help. I like to help, and I enjoy seeing people become better than me. So if you want to help if you want to be a billionaire, help a billion people. It's not even about being a billionaire. It's like, how do we accumulate resources to redistribute them again? Because money is not an end, it's a means. So, you know, that's my focus.
I love that. Alli, you're tired. We got to get you to bed in Italy. And Ruben, thank you so much for being here with us. I want to thank our listeners for listening to Disrupt Education. Check out, we'll have all the links below. And thank you so much for hanging out with us.